Hey everyone, I hope you're having a great day. If you're new here, my name is Mark. I'm a poker player from Portland, Oregon. Thanks for checking out my channel and I hope you enjoyed this video. If you are not new here, thanks for the return visit and I really appreciate your support. In this video, we're heading out to Final Table Poker Club for a 20K guarantee tournament and we're just gonna go straight into the action. Just before that, if you find that you like this video, please smash the like button. If one of my memes makes you laugh, if you think I played a hand great or very poorly, please let me know in the comments, and then please consider subscribing and hit the notification bell so that you know when my next video comes out. And pro tip, you're not gonna want to miss the next video. Let's head straight to the action. I'll catch you guys later. Here we are outside Final Table Poker Club in Portland, Oregon, ready to battle it out in this 20K guaranteed poker tournament. We buy in for $100 and we get our seat assignment as well as our starting stack of 13K. We start the action at the 100-200 level with the 200 big blind ante, and we look down at ace-8 offsuit in the big blind. We see a limp from the under the gun one player and action folds around to us. I suppose we could consider raising here, but we decide to check our option and see a flop. The flop comes ace-5 king with 2 spades. We flop top pair with a decent kicker. We check and flow to the undergun +1 player who bets 300, and we have an easy call. The turn is a 4 of clubs, which shouldn't change much. We decide to check again with the intention of calling a bet. The undergun 1 player bets 800 and we make the call. The river is a 9 of spades, which completes the front door flush draw. We check once again and the undergun 1 player bets 1600. We thought about this for a second and ultimately decided on the sticky call since we under-repped our holding through the entire hand. We're happy to see they're holding a smaller ace than ours. Unfortunately, it's one that made 2 pair on the turn and they take it down. Not off to the best of starts, let's shake it off and move on to the next hand. In the following hand, we look down at Jack-9 of hearts from the button. Action folds around to us, we make a standard open to 700 and only the big blind comes along. The flop comes deuce-4 ace with 2 hearts, giving us a flush draw. When the big blind checks to us, I think we have a very easy bet here as we can not only represent the ace as the preflop aggressor, but we can also build a pot in case we hit our flush on later streets. We down bet to 600 and our opponent folds. Next hand, we peel ace-10 of clubs in middle position. We see a limp from the undergun player and we bump it up to 800. The small blind calls and the undergun player calls as well, so we go 3 ways to the flop in position. The flop comes 7-3-7 with 2 clubs. We flop another flush draw and action checks to us. We're going to c-bet with our draw. We don't need to go big as it's hard for our opponents to have connected on a small paired board. We bet 1000 and both players fold. We did not capture the next hand on film, unfortunately, as we picked up aces, faced a raise that we 3-bet, only to see our opponent 4-bet all in, which we snap called, obviously, and ended up versus jacks. Aces held up, and we ended up almost tripling up our stack to around 28,000. In the following hand, we pick up King-Queen of diamonds in the big blind. Action folds around to the button, who opens to 1500. The small blind folds, and I debated between calling and 3-betting. The button could be raising with all kinds of holdings here, and we could easily tank down the pot by 3-betting, but King-Queen suited is a hand that plays really well post-flop, so we decided on a call, and we go heads up to the flop, which comes King-4-5 with 2 spades. We make a well-disguised top pair with a very good kicker. We check and flow, expecting the button, who's been a pretty active player at this table, to bet 100% of the time, and indeed, they c-bet for 1500. Once again, we debated between calling and raising here, ultimately deciding on the call and letting the button continue bluffing or betting with the worst hand on the turn. The turn is not ideal though, it's the ace of clubs. Not ideal because we downgrade from top pair to second pair, and the button has a ton of aces in their range. We check, and this time they bet 3200. With the ace being an obvious card for them to bluff on, as well as 2 flush draws on the board, we could and should definitely continue, but with the prospect of facing a big bet on the river and being put in a really tough spot, we decided to fold. The player later told us they flopped an ace-high spade flush draw and turned the ace. Happy to have made the fold, even if I believe the correct decision was to call in this spot. Here we look down at pocket kings in the cutoff. We see the hijack player open up the action to 1000 and we love to see it. We make a standard 3-bet to 3500 and sadly the hijack folds. Next hand we peel King-10 suited in the big blind and we see a min raise from the under the gun player. The under the gun 1 player calls and so do the middle position player, button and small blind. Another spot where I debated between calling and 3-betting, ultimately deciding on a call. we go 6 ways to a flop of 6 deuce 8 with 2 diamonds, which looks pretty damn good to us. We check and flow, and the under the gun player c-bets for 1300. Action starts folding around, and we are preparing ourselves to check raise until the button disrupts our plans by raising themselves to 3300. We would love to see a turn with our second nut flush draw, but we have to acknowledge that the under the gun player c-bet into 5 players, which typically signals a lot of strength, and this is the first time we saw them raise pre-flop. This is also the first time that we see the button raise post-flop, and thinking about the holdings they could be doing this with, we have to discount flush draws since we're holding one ourselves. They could be doing this with a straight draw, but it's unlikely, so we have to also credit them for at least having top pair. Uncertain about facing a re-raise from the under the gun player, we decided to fold here and wait for a better spot. Let's see how the rest of the hand unfolded. The under the gun player calls the raise, and they go heads up to a turn, which is a 3 of clubs, on which both players check, so we're a little bit annoyed. The river is the queen of diamonds. No! 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 Under the gun player makes a small bet of 2300, and the button surprisingly folds. So it's hard to see what they raised with on the flop. Maybe they did have a straight draw with a hand like 7-9 maybe. Anyway, annoying, because if they had just called, we would have seen a river and drilled the second nut flush. In the following hand, we look down at queen jack offsuit in the small blind. We see a limp from the middle position, and the cutoff and button come along. Holding queen jack here with 3 limps ahead of us, we decide to test our opponents and see how much they want to see a flop by bumping it up to 3500. Turns out they weren't that interested because they all fold. Nice to pick up some chips uncontested. The next hand we get involved in, we pick up ace jack suited in the under the gun 1 position. We make a standard open to 1600, and only the big blind comes along. The flop comes 6-8 deuce with 2 spades. We completely whiff on this board that smashes the big blind's calling range, so we're already prepared to pretty much give up on this hand unless we improve. They check to us, and we check back. The turn is the 10 of diamonds, and the big blind leads for 2500. We fold. In this hand, we look down at pocket 10s on the button. We see 2 limps from the under the gun and hijack players. We make a standard raise to 2000, and both players call. We go 3 ways to a flop of 9-7-4 with 2 diamonds, and both players check to us. With an overpair on a pretty wet board, we go for a c-bet of 2500, and only the hijack player calls. At this point, it's becoming clear to us that this player is pretty sticky, so our intention is to keep extracting value from them on later streets. The turn is the 8 of clubs, which brings an additional flush draw. It does also bring out some potential straight draws, but we block a lot of them with our pocket 10s. The hijack checks to us again, and although we do only have 1 pair on this very wet and connected board, against this specific opponent, I think we can go for thin value, so we bet 7500, and they call again. Not feeling super comfortable as we head out to the river, which comes the 10 of diamonds, which obviously gives us a set, but also puts a 4-liner to a straight on the board. The hijack checks to us one more time. At this point, I am discounting a jack high straight from their holdings. They wouldn't check that to us for fear that we would check back. Could they have a random 6 here? Not sure what 6 they would be calling a raise with pre-flop except for 6s, or maybe a suited a6. I suppose they could have called flop with a6 of diamonds, or maybe got sticky on the flop with a6 of clubs and picked up a flush draw on the turn. I don't think they have 5-6, as they would have bet or check raised the turn. I don't think they have a set, or they would have raised at some point on this wet connected board, so unless they're holding a random 6, we have the nuts here. It's a bit of a dicey spot, but ultimately we decided to go for max value and shove the rest of our stack, 20,000. We don't get snap called, which is great, but the player starts talking out loud, wondering if I have a jack, which has me a little bit worried that they might in fact have a 6. As time goes by, I start to relax a little bit, as it looks like they might consider folding. More time goes by, and I'm surprised to see that they ultimately make the call. I ask if they have a 6, and they say no, so we flip our set of 10s and we're good. We didn't get to see the player's cards, but I'm really curious to know what they called with. The only hand I can think of would be some kind of 2 pair, like 8-9 or 7-9. Not sure. First time that I find myself in this super weird spot. I think the shove made sense based on my analysis of their potential holdings. Glad I got max value for my hand here. In the following hand, we pick up ace jack suited in the cutoff. The hijack limps for 600, and we bump it up to 2000. The hijack calls. We go heads up to a flop of 6-8 queen, and they check. On this super dry board, we should continue betting with 100% of our range, so that's what we do, and we down bet to 1500. The hijack calls pretty quickly, which makes it look like they have some Queen X holding, as I would expect them to think a little bit longer if they had a really strong holding. The turn is interesting. It's the 9 of spades, which gives us the nut flush draw as well as a gut shot straight draw. The hijack leads into us this time for a small bet of 1500. Not sure what to make of this sizing, but I think it's time to put some pressure on our opponent, who's been one of the tightest players at the table. I don't remember how much they had in their stack exactly, but I know I had them covered by a lot. So much that if they ended up calling and we lost, we would still have a very healthy stack. So I ended up putting them all in the event that we got called with our draws and our ace. We're still about 30% to win against a queen. It doesn't come to that though, as they fold and show a queen for the vlog, which is super cool of them. I believe their name was Brooke, so shout out to Brooke. We take the spot down. Next time we get involved in, we look down at pocket eights in the low jack. When action folds to us, we go ahead and open up the action to 2000, and we get called by the cutoff, the button, and the big blind. We go 4 ways to a flop of 8, 2, 9 with 2 diamonds. We drill our set on the board that is likely to have connected with one or more of our opponents. Let's build up a pot. Action checks to us, and with straight and flush draws available, we go for about a half pot bet of 4500, which only the hijack calls. We go heads up to the turn, and at this point the dealer notices the phone on the table and asks me if I'm filming. I say, yeah, I'm making a vlog, and he says, oh shit, really? Well, vlog this, as he turns the last remaining 8 in the deck. That's right, we turn mother bluffing quads. The first quads of the vlog, and we are loving life right now. What's also great is that it puts a second spade on the board, so there are even more draws available, and we do want to keep extracting value from our monster now in case they do have a draw that breaks out on the river. We also want to keep our opponent in the pot though, so we go for less than half pot. We bet 7,000, which they call. The river is a 6, and now we're trying to figure out how much we can bet to get paid. We go for slightly over a third pot. We make it 11,000, and they call once again. We show them the bad news, and they show pocket jacks. I thought at the time that I got maximum value from their specific hand, as they were probably worried that I could be holding an overpair to their jacks. I'm curious to know what you guys think about my betting sizes. Let me know in the comments. In this hand, we peel ace-king offsuit in the hijack. Action folds around to us. We make it 2,500, and everybody folds. Seems like we have some momentum, and it's not about to stop as we pick up pocket aces once again in the big blind. Even better, there's an open from the under the gun 1 player to 3,500, and action folds around to us. It's tempting to simply flat here and let our opponent hang themselves in case they make some kind of top pair hand, but with the raise coming from early position, there's a good chance they have a pretty strong holding themselves. So let's try to play for stacks. I raise it up to 8,500. Our opponent does not waste much time before 4 betting all in. We snap call, and they show pocket kings. Wow, what a sick setup. Really unlucky for them. Let's go to a run out.
Wow. Damn. Oh, you're kidding. Holy shit.
Well, that sucked. Can't be too upset though with the way we've been running so far. And one of the benefits of making a vlog is that when bad beats like these happen, at least you get some good content out of it. Alright, let's shake this one off and get our head back in the game. We pick up ace-jack in the low jack, and action folds around to us. We open to 3,500, and the big blind calls. We go heads up to a flop of ace, ace, jack. Well, seems like the run good is coming back our way. The big blind checks to us, and we have such a lock on this hand that in this spot, we're happy to let our opponent catch up. The turn is a 5, which puts a third heart on the board, and we love life when we see the big blind push their stack forward. They go all in. We obviously snap call, and wow did they catch up. They made a freaking full house on the turn with pocket 5s. How insane is that? What the hell is going on? Let's go to a river. I guess we need to dodge the case 5, which, surprise surprise, does not come. We bust our opponent and win the pot. What a sick way to bust a tournament, man. At least they had a good bad beat story to tell their buddies, I guess. Next hand, we look down at king jack suited in the under the gun +1 position. We open to 3,500, and everyone folds. The following hand we get involved in, we pick up ace queen suited in the low jack. Man, we are getting dealt so many playable hands, it's crazy. Definitely makes for a fun tournament. Action folds around to us, we make our standard open to 4,500, but we face some resistance this time as the cutoff 3-bets us to 11,000. An interesting spot here where we have to decide between calling and raising, as obviously folding is not an option. This is the player from the quad 8s versus jacks hand earlier, so we know they're playing pretty tight. We don't want to 3-bet, get jammed on, and then find ourselves forced to call in a spot where we'll be either flipping or dominated. We opt for the flat call and we go heads up to the flop. We look in disbelief as the dealer flips over 6, 10 deuce, all spades. We flop the mother bluffin' nuts. This is just unbelievable. We check to the original raiser, praying that they c-bet, and they oblige with a bet of 13,000. No point in raising and losing our customer here, we call. The turn comes an ace, which we love to see as that most likely connected with our opponent pretty hard. It looks like it did as they shove for around 35,000 and we obviously snap call. Let's see a river. It's an inconsequential 7 of hearts and wow. Once again, what a sick setup. Our opponent had ace king with the king of spades. So they flopped the second nut flush draw and then turned top pair. They probably thought they turned the world, but sadly they ran into the nuts. What an insane run, getting dealt good cards, smashing boards, and having our opponents make second or third best hands. It's just crazy. Second break comes around, there are 75 players left. 18 get paid, almost 7K up top, and the way we've been running, we're definitely dreaming of a top finish tonight. Lots of poker to go though, and it only takes 1 or 2 mistakes to ruin a tournament, so let's remain focused and let's go back to the action. First hand back from break, we look down at ace-6 offsuit in the big blind. We see a limp from the cutoff and the button. The small blind completes, and well, we'll gladly see a flop for free. We check back and go 4 ways to the flop. The flop comes Jack, Ace 3, and we flop top pair with a weak kicker. We have one plan and one plan only, get to a cheap showdown. Action checks around to the button and they bet 3,000. The small blind calls 3,000 and even though we could be up against a bigger ace, we're not quite ready to fold yet. We make the call, the cutoff folds, we go 3 ways to the turn, which is a deuce, bringing 2 spades on the board. Action checks to the button once again, who bets 5,000. The small blind gets out of the way and well, this deuce doesn't change much for us. If we were ahead on the flop, we're still ahead. If we were behind, we're still behind. This is a pretty small bet, so we're happy to call once again and reevaluate on the river. The river is another deuce, pairing up the board. This is an interesting card because we're now chopping against aces that beat us, like ace 7, ace 8, ace 9, or ace 10. We check once again, prepare to call a bet, but the button slows down and checks back. We show our ace, and it's good. They had jack 9 for second pair. Let's freaking go. As players keep getting knocked out of the tournament, the organizers have to balance the number of players at each table, and as a consequence, our table breaks, which is unfortunate, as we had built up a good image and we got to know our opponent's playstyles pretty well, but not much we can do about it. Looks like we cannot lose a hand at the moment. We once again have some nice momentum going, and we're looking to keep it up when we pick up king-queen offsuit in the low jack. Action folds around to us, and we open the action up to 8,000. The cutoff and the big blind call, and we go 3 ways to a flop of 10-10-6 with 2 clubs. The big blind checks to us, and on pair boards such as this one, I will almost always throw out a small bet as I find it gets the job done more than not. We have a solid image at the table right now, so let's capitalize on that. We bet 10,000, and both players fold. Let's go. In this following hand, we look down at queen 8 offsuit in the big blind. Not a premium by any means, but there's an open shove from the hijack for 12,000, just about 3 big blinds. When the small blind calls, I decide to call as well for several reasons. First of all, I'm getting a good price to see a flop, and also because there's a player all in, there's a good chance this hand is going to get checked down to the river, so we can fully realize whatever equity we have. We go 3 ways to the flop of king 3-5 with 2 spades, and as expected, action checks around. Turn is the 9 of spades, and once again, action checks around. The river is the ace of clubs, action checks around one last time. The all-in player shows ace queen, and they triple up. Nice hand. We now pick up ace jack suited in the hijack, and action folds to us. We make a standard open to 8,000, the hijack calls, and the big blind 3-bet shoves for 15,000. Looking back on the situation, I think this would have been a great spot for me to reshove, get the hijack out of the hand, and isolate the all-in player with a hand that's likely to be better than theirs. But instead, I went for the flat call, anticipating the hijack to call as well, and play the hand pretty passively in an effort to take the big blind out. This is what happens as the hijack makes the call for 15,000 as well. We go 3 ways to the flop of deuce 4-4 rainbow, action checks around. The turn is an 8 of clubs, which brings us a flush draw. With no side pot to fight for, I don't see a point in betting here. Let's see if we can hit our flush on the river. Action checks around. The river is the queen of diamonds, and once again, action checks around. The hijack shows queen 10 suited for a rivered pair of queens. I believe the all-in player had ace 8. Regardless of what they were holding, we messed up here by not going all in pre-flop. As blinds go up and stacks get shallower, more and more players bust, and our table breaks once again. We move to one of 3 tables left with about 30 players left in the tournament. First hand we get involved in, we look down at queen jack offsuit in the small blind. When action falls to us, we're going to go ahead and raise here and try to steal the big blind and the ante. We raise to 25,000 and it gets the job done. Nice to pick up some much needed chips. One orbit later and we pick up jacks in the big blind. What a great time to pick up a premium hand with our stack dipping just under 20 big blinds. Action folds around to the button who limps for 8,000. We could go for a 3-bet here, but there's no need to complicate things, so we go for the all-in and the button folds. In the following hand, we peel king jack on the button. Action folds around to the low jack who raises to 20,000. I think we make a mistake here. Our hand should either be played as a fold or sometimes as an all-in, but we went for the third option and we called. The big blind punishes us by 3-bet jamming for just a little over 100,000. The low jack folds and we are forced to fold our hand. Great squeeze play by the big blind who ended up showing ace queen. Third break comes around and everyone is starting to feel the pressure as 28 players remain but only 18 are getting paid. We have just above average stack. Let's stay focused. This is not the time to make a mistake. Slightly annoyed to lose chips we can't really afford to lose with only a few players to bust before we make the money. We now pick up queen jack suited in the hijack with about 15 big blinds in our stack. Action folds around to us and we make it 25,000 with the intention of picking up the blinds and moving on to the next hand. But our friend Ronnie in the big blind has different ideas and calls. We go heads up to a flop of 8-6-5 with 2 diamonds. Ronnie checks to us, and despite the fact that we completely whiffed this board and that it smashes Ronnie's range, we decided to c-bet 15,000 hoping to take the pot down. Unfortunately, Ronnie is a non-believer and calls. The turn brings the king of hearts, which now puts 2 flush draws on board. Thinking that the king really connects with our pre-flop raising range, we throw out another bet of 30,000, really hoping to end the hand right there and then. Ronnie still does not believe and calls again. Really unsure how to navigate the river now, which comes a deuce of hearts, which completes the hard draw. Ronnie checks to us one last time and, well, part of us really wants to fire the third bullet, but this river, deuce, is really not a good card for another bluff, as apart from completing the hard draw, it doesn't change much to the board, and we feel like if Ronnie called us up to this point, he's most likely going to call again on the river. Frustrated, we wave the white flag and give up, announcing we have queen high, and Ronnie shows up 6 deuce offsuit. Damn, Ronnie, that's cold. Did not expect to be called this light pre-flop, on the flop, and turn. And thank the poker gods we did not fire the third bullet as Ronnie rivered 2 pair. We got really owned on this one, and we are now sitting with 8 big blinds, 5 from the money, and we are livid. Didn't I just say this is not the time to make a mistake? And yet here I go dunking off half my stack, on a bluff, 5 players left to the money. Why? We're still in this though, and we're going to keep fighting. So what's going to happen? Are we going to squander this run good, bust out before we make the money, come home empty-handed? Are we going to min cash? Are we going to maybe do a deep run, maybe a final table and a big score?
Stay tuned for scenes from the next episode of Dragon Ball Z.